All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Rogue AI event. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about data to decision story, a story where I had to make a buy versus rent decision, among others. Um, so recently, I was looking at the house market and I was struggling to kind of make this big decision in my life. So I put on my hat as a data and decision scientist, and I'm gonna walk you through the process today, where you'll be seeing how I made my final decision. So hopefully at the end of this talk, you're gonna learn a bit more about what it takes to make quality decisions in order to increase your odds at achieving a desired outcome. So the agenda for the day will be a quick intro, which I just made, and then I'll be discussing a bit about the data decision story, rent versus buy, and then I'll show you a live demonstration about the simulation tool that I used to make my analysis, and then we can end up with a discussion. So a little bit about me, I'm sharing content related to tech and business through Rogue AI, and then I have a website with all of the content that I share. And then to get a video recording of this talk, you can leave your email on my website to join my newsletter there. You can reach me out on Ali Tarraf on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Feel free to drop me a note and say we met here. So the motivation behind this talk is I was looking on the market for a house, and I wasn't sure how to. It's a big decision. It's a complicated decision, and it's a big investment. So a lot of factors came into play that pushed me to take a step back and put on my data and decision analytics hat on to analyze better the options that I have. So this is a story of the process and my doubts and the final decision along the way. Um, so how do we make quality decisions? Um, there's certain practices that you follow to make good decisions. This one is out of Stanford University Decisions and Ethics Center. So these guys developed a framework, and what they say is first you develop an appropriate frame. Okay, what are we actually deciding on? Are we seeing things on the same level? Is this what we're talking about? And then once you have this common ground of understanding, you start developing alternatives for your decisions. For example, let's say you're hungry and then you want to eat, and then you made a decision to eat or not eat, for example, or you already made the decision to eat, and then you'll figure out, okay, what are we going to eat? So maybe it's gonna be a chicken sandwich, that's one alternative, or it's gonna be a salad, that's another alternative, right? This is kind of a simple model. On the other side, after you make a decision, after you figure out what are your alternatives, you need to collect information. Okay, what do we need to know to be able to make a certain choice? And then step number 4 is, okay, what are the consequences do we care about in making that choice? In the case of the chicken sandwich versus a salad, let's say versus a pasta, maybe the consequence that I care about is losing weight and be healthy. In that case, maybe I'll just eat a salad, for example, right? I mean, that's a simple model. And the analysis, step 5, basically we kind of dive down to try to build more trade-offs and to say maybe choice A is better than choice B, and what is our rationale and what is our logical reasoning to make that choice, and so on. And in the end, I mean, you'll be kind of committing to action. No decision is perfect unless you actually test it out and then put it into practice. Else, the whole value of this exercise will be irrelevant if you don't actually commit to the action of the decision. So for me and for us, it was okay. Should I buy a house in the first place? Should I keep renting? And ultimately, what we're deciding, by we, I mean my wife and I, is where and how we're gonna build a home to fit our lifestyle. That is the decision that we're actually taking, right? So, what choices do we have? Um, I thought broadly and then tried to include as many choices as I could. And then some of them I was really interested in. I mean, keep renting, that's the obvious one. I'm actually renting a house now. Or even buy a house, that's kind of the second option. Maybe we're interested in building a house after purchasing a plot of land. That is something that occurred to me also. Or maybe we don't want to rent, we don't want to purchase a house, we're just gonna leave our rental and then go live with family and friends. That is an option for people to live by, right? It should be included. Maybe we can live in a community and then sell our labor to live rent free in certain communities. I know a couple of people who do that. Maybe we can live off the grid in a self-built cabin on a public land. I mean, some people do that, and I'm interested in cabins and all of that, for example. Maybe we can live on an RV and then just kind of roam around all over. These are choices that are valid choices, lifestyle choices to be able to live somewhere, right? Maybe we can become homeless and I mean, just kind of don't live anywhere. I mean, if that's something you want to explore, maybe that's also a choice that you have, right? And then this is a funny one. Hopefully, I'm a big fan of SpaceX. Leave Earth, settle on Mars, maybe one day. We'll see what happens with that. Well, very quickly, my wife discarded option 4 to 9, and then I mean, this is a collaborative decision process, making things harder, right? You're not just alone doing a decision. Uh, no atmosphere. Yep, no atmosphere. That's a challenge. Hopefully, we'll figure out the oxygen concentration in domes and fabricate some interesting housing there. So, I mean, out of these decisions, I mean, we're left with three: renting, buying a house, building a house. All right, these are kind of the serious one we try to consider. So, what do we need to know in order to be making those decisions? Well, there's tons of things that go into living somewhere, buying a house or renting a house, right? I mean, the house prices, the land prices, the rent prices, the budget, the interest rate to take a mortgage, the actual discount rate of the market in terms of stock market returns, whatever down payment I'm gonna be putting on the house. For example, if I take that money and put it in the stock market, it's gonna get me some returns, and I'm losing on that, for example. Whereas the time horizon, I'm expecting to stay here for 3 years or 10 years or 15 years. There's also a variable rate of inflation, moving costs just to move houses, or and then even selling the house later on, and then you have another types of moving cost, taxes, insurance, interest payments, and many, many more. Among them, also appreciation rate. How's the market going? Is the market going up, going down? What are the general expectations around that? So a lot of variables there. And some other variables which are of less quantitative nature is, I mean, what kind of house do we want? Where do we want it? Does the house have to feel good to have a certain feeling? And then how does that determine the pricing of the house and everything else? What are friends and families and realtors saying about house buying right now? Should we wait? And you can think of hundreds of other questions here. So there's tons of stuff that we need to know. I did a bit of market research to understand a bit what's going on in the market, and then it's very apparent that it is a seller's market. I mean, homes are flying off the market in records time, and this is due to many different reasons. The fires that happened in Southern Oregon, the shortage in home inventory, close to 50% compared to last year, as you see on the graph. Um, the number of listing graph, the first one here on the right. Last year, you had 800 homes, uh, and today, at the end of the graph, if you look at the red curve, you had around 400 homes, and this is in March 21 compared to March 20. So what this means for potential buyers, I mean, if we decide to buy like us, is we need to be super quick in making any offer. We have less options to look at, so it's a tricky market to be to be making a purchase in. And then also this raises question: okay, if prices are up, and then will the house still hold value in the future? We don't know, right? That's also an uncertainty. But to us, what was something that mattered? I mean, what is the consequence that we care about? We cared about maximizing our net worth. I mean, by minimizing what we'll be paying for housing over the time horizon. What that means is, okay, I'm living, let's say, for the next 10, 15 years in this area, and then I have the choice of renting or buying or building. What is the ultimate best financial choice for me in this time horizon? The other one is maximizing our happiness. Maybe one of those choices, renting, is making me unhappy for some reason, and building a house will make me happy, and that is something that I want to be able to maximize. Now, it's super tricky to quantify and measure happiness, but there's some indirect way that you can say, okay, maybe I feel better about this and not about this, and quantify that in some form of numbers. So what is now this is a step where we'll be spending a lot of time, which is in the analysis, and then I'll show you how I developed a model to be able to answer and then help me make my choice. So what is the ideal logically reasoned choice here? So we have three choices to make. One of the three choices: keep renting, buy a house, build a house. We have some data that we collected about those choices, and we have some metrics that are important to us. So using what I know, the data, what do I choose the decision to satisfy what I care about, which are the metrics we talked about. So this is what we'll be doing in the next 10-15 minutes, and then I'll be showing a demo about how I did that. It's a quantitative decision analysis, and then I'll be talking about that. But first, to keep things simple, let's eliminate building a house choice. I quickly look at the construction market, and then all the builders are super busy, and then the prices they're quoting per square foot is super expensive. So I quickly eliminated that choice. So now we're at two choices: keep renting or buy a house. And then with all of the variables that we had before, the data, the quantitative variables, I mean, it's a huge list, and there's a couple more that I did not include. So how do we structure that list in a way that makes sense and start building relationship between these variables to create a certain model? So here I want to introduce you to the concept of an influence diagram. So an influence diagram is used to create a model by defining relationships and formulas between different variables. So for example, let me try to turn on my laser pointer here. So for example, if we look at this variable here, which is the cost to rent, you notice that it has two arrows coming in, and it has one arrow going out of it, right? And then those two arrows coming in, they connect to the discount rate here, which is basically the market rate, interest rate that I can make in the stock market, and the rate of inflation, how much the dollar is losing value year over year by inflation and everything getting expensive. So, so the cost of rent is a function of the rate of inflation and the discount rate and many other things, but these are the ones that I'm linking to in this block diagram here. You also see that here I have buying price as an input decision. I also have to buy or to rent as an input decision, and I have many other different variables. One thing to note here is the important variable, output variable, which is our value metric, which is the present value of buying and renting. Present value means how much is buying or renting going to be worth to me in present value dollars? Because remember, we're doing this exercise over, let's say, the time horizon, which is 15 years, for example. And during those 15 years, if I keep renting, let's say, for $10,000 a year, and then $10,000 a year in calculated over 15 years are going to be have to account for the time value of money, which is calculated using the discount rate. So it's a way to estimate the value of money today and factoring in time. It's a robust way to calculate that. So notice that some of these models, the cost to buy has other models in it. So the cost to buy is a model that has many different variables inside it. So out of pocket cost to own, so all of the maintenance that you have to do on the house, for example, future sales proceed if you end up selling the house, and mortgage loan, down payment, interest rate, moving cost, all of these are factored in. And the cost to rent, it's much simpler. You just have the monthly rent and you compute that on a cash flow basis, and then you calculate that over 15 years using the present value calculation. You have more models. So the out-of-pocket cost to own, like I was mentioning, you have the interest payment, the mortgage payment, the maintenance, the insurance, the property tax that you're factoring in those models. The opportunity cost is basically how much you'll be saving on interest rate and how much you'll be kind of making off once you're kind of selling the house. And then the future sales proceeds. Once you sell the house, you have to factor in the selling cost and then the selling price and also subtract from the remaining mortgage remaining, right? This will become a bit clearer in the next couple of slides and when I explore the model. But now, I mean, what I want you to understand is this is a way to arrange variables in a useful way and link them with formulas, which I'll show you later on, in order to try to get results and an analytical result. So for example, for the input of my model, this is an example I took. My inputs would be the time horizon is 15 years. The discount rate is basically 4%. The rate of inflation is variable, and the mean value is around 3.5% over 15 years. The buying price, an estimate buying price for houses around here, 522, that's just kind of a number. Percent down payment, I chose a very low down payment. Mortgage interest rate over 15 years, also mortgage rate are pretty good, so this is a typical number here. And appreciation rate, which is a super important number. I mean, do we think that the house is going to appreciate, and if so, by how much over the years, over 15 years? I put in a number of around 4% for now. Monthly rent compared to, I mean, let's say if you're renting a 2-bedroom house here, for example, it's going to be around 1,800, for example. So let's see how we'll be going about that and then doing some analysis to come out with some answers about what decision is better. But before we dive into the answers, I want to present to you kind of the tool that I use to make those decision model. And it's called Analytica.
Are your spreadsheet models clumsy and confusing? Having trouble creating flexible diagrams for better decisions? Quit wasting your time with spreadsheets. It's time to try Analytica. Analytica allows you to break free of your old spreadsheet and bring clarity to your difficult decisions. We've been helping people just like you build insightful decision models for over 20 years. You build models simply by drawing intuitive influence diagrams. You can explore multi-dimensional arrays with ease. You can treat anything
Ali, I can't hear
uncertain
you
as a probability
right
distribution.
now.
Oh, so you can't hear the video. I'm hearing it at all. Um, so I'll just kind of mention a couple of things about Analytica. It's basically a way to model different variables and make calculation. Think of it as Excel with superpower to be able to make calculations and then link them in a really nice way. So let's see how it works in the next couple of slides. So I crunched the numbers and I want to present you with one of the values and one of the conclusions, the results, and then later on we're gonna expand on these results. So if we look at the present value of buying versus renting, this graph is telling us two things. If I decide to rent after 15 years, this is going to cost me around 310K just renting. If I decide to buy after 15 years, this is going to cost me around 120K. And keep in mind, this is with the input variables that I talked about before, right? However, these numbers are kind of, super crazy low, right? I mean, if you look at the buying side of 120K, this is super low. If you divide this by 15 years and by 12 months, this means that um, I'll be paying around $666 a month for owning a house, right? Which is amazing. Uh, However, compare that to the rent, which is, we said it was around 1800 before in our input value, 300K, 310K divided by 15 divided by 12, that's around 1700 a month. So why is that? Well, let's get back a couple of slides here and then see what we said here. We're assuming that the house will appreciate by 4% a year. That means that when we sell the house after 15 years, and then we're kind of capturing that value, we have some equity in the house, which means we paid less out of our pocket in terms of value out, right? That's why it's much more economical and it makes much more financial sense to actually buy in this case. However, one criticism to this approach would be, Ali, how can I trust the numbers that you're just kind of mentioning? What if the market value crash? You mentioned a 4% appreciation rate before. I mean, what if it doesn't appreciate? What if it's kind of a 0% appreciation rate? What if I want a more expensive house or a less expensive house? Is that something advisable or not, for example? Or what if I default and I can't pay my mortgage, for example? Is that something that can happen? How can that affect me and then affect this decision? We can answer some of these in what will come next in the sensitivity analysis. And basically, what the sensitivity analysis is, it's basically it focuses on what happens to the output variable, in this case, buying versus renting a house, as as kind of calculated by the present value of the house, and then it focuses on that. How is the output going to change if some of the input parameters are changing? So in this case, if we're interested in the market value, the appreciation rate, and then how much are we going to pay for a house and how is that going to affect our decision, then we can do a sensitivity analysis to find out. So I performed a sensitivity analysis, and then I'll be showing that in a demo soon. And then these are some of the preliminary results that I'll be sharing with you quickly here. I know this graph is a bit kind of hard to read. The next table is going to be clearer, but I want to point to a couple of points. So if we vary the buying price of the house, let's say from 400 to 600K, And then if we vary the appreciation rate from 10% a year to -10 to 10% a year, and then we look at the difference between the buying and the renting. How much will I, for example, for a number here, which is 100K, this means I'm better off buying a house, and it's much better than renting by $100,000. I'll be making more money that way if I buy a house, right? That's what this axis is telling you. I want to attract your attention on a couple of these points. For example, at this point here, if we're assuming the yellow curve, which is a -4% appreciation rate, which means the house is losing value because of the market conditions. If your house is around 500K, you'll only start losing money on this deal of buying instead of renting if your house depreciate by more than 4%. Something significant to keep in mind, right? So I mean, the market can be losing value, but you still be coming off as in a better position because of this analysis, what it's telling us. If the market value is appreciating by 2%, you'd be better off, you'd be making 100K more than renting. So everything here above is buying is better than renting. Everything below here, it's renting is better than buying. If, for example, the market value stays the same, this is the blue graph here, 0, you can afford up to a 560K house while still kind of being better than renting. This is going to be clearer in this table. This is a lookup table of the difference between buying and renting. The blue stuff area, the blue numbers is telling me buying is better than renting. The red stuff, it's telling me renting is better than buying. And you notice some of these conditions here, which is the price of the house and the appreciation rate. So even if at a -4 appreciation rate, which is appreciation in this case in the market, I would still be better off, for example, in buying a house if it's around 400K. At 500K, I would still be better off if even the house is not appreciating, right? And right now, I mean, the market, houses are appreciating in value, and that's why we see a lot of houses on the market right now. So this is kind of a quick conclusion of this analysis. Let us see how I made that happen, and then with the software Analytica that I talked about before. It's a free software, and then even the tutorial is free. The one I based some of this analysis on, and I'll be showing you how it works. So here we go. This is Analytica. So you can download that software, it's free, you install it, and once you open it, this is what you will see. If you click on analytical tutorial, okay, oops, not that one. If you do more example models, it will open up the example folder, and then our example is the tutorial model, the rent versus buy model. So if you click on that, it's going to open that example, and then it's a it's a nice user interface. You can change some of the variables here, and then you can press on, let's say if I want the house to be 500K, for example, instead of 522, I'm gonna do that. And if I press on calculate, it's going to calculate and give me some output result. Now I can change that result and display it in different ways. I can do the mid value, which is what I showed you before, and then I can also do the mean value, and these are kind of different statistical numbers, right? So for example, with the mean value, the average, renting is around 313K, is going to set me back, while buying is going to set me back 64K. For example, if I, instead of having an appreciation rate of 100%, hold on, of 3%, which is matching the inflation rate. Let me try to decrease that a bit and do 2%. So, and then if I do a calculate here, notice now buying is gonna set me back, instead of the 50, 60K, it's gonna set me back about 140K. And this is just showing kind of the calculation where you're saying, oh, so your house is not gonna be appreciating as much, then you're gonna be ending up paying more out of your pocket to be living in this house instead of gaining in terms of equity, right? So you can explore this model in multiple different ways. However, I'm interested in sharing with you and showing you more the analysis where I perform the parametric analysis we talked about. Um, so with that analysis, so I basically did the parametric analysis here where I said, okay, I want prices to be varying from 400,000 to 600,000. I also want appreciation rate to be from -10 to 10. And then I have this model which is already set up. I have also 15 years time horizon. The discount rate is 6%. And then what is the present value of buying and renting? If I press on that, I can see here in this table that the present value of renting, it's constant, it doesn't change, right? I mean, you're just paying the same value of rent over and over again. However, if I go to the buying phase, and I can see this nice table here, which is the one I showed you on the PowerPoint slides over there. Like this is the appreciation rate and depreciation rate, and this is kind of the different house values. I can also see different things in terms of probabilities, which is a really nice thing to look at uncertainty. It's typically the way to go. So, for example, if let's do if I'm interested, the house that I'm interested in is around 500K, and I'm interested in buying that house. And I'm looking at these weird curves here, right? And these are called the cumulative probability curves. And let's look at one with the zero appreciation rate. If I look at the zero appreciation rate curve here, what it's telling me is I have a 50%, there's a 50% probability that my present value for buying a house is gonna be around minus 200 something, right? If the house appreciates by 4%, my present value is going to be around 100 something here, right? And then this is a nice way to give you a certain range of confidence. So if I'm looking at between the 20% and 80% probability, um, how much am I going to be set back? And it looks like for the 0%, I mean it's somewhere from 220 to 300. Compare that to renting, which is, I mean, 340 to 280, which is much higher. And this is what the information that the table told us when we kind of quickly analyzed it. So there's a lot more that you can do with software like Analytica. I mean, that I can go on in just 1 hour. But I hope that, I mean, you saw that with a simple discrete variable like buy or rent decision with a different buying prices that I'm varying with different appreciation rate, I can use and build decision models to inform and make better informed decisions. So I'm gonna get back to the slides here. And this was kind of my quick demo on Analytica and how we built and analyzed the data with the model. Now, personally, I feel much more confident about the results. I understand how the market appreciation will affect my buy decision. I understand the effect of other variables like inflation, buying price, interest rate, and discount rate, and how they'll affect my long-term buy decision. And personally, I can recommend to myself and to others. I mean, each situation is different depending on the house you're buying and then some of the mortgage rates that you're getting. I can recommend with a greater degree of confidence that the logical choice is to buy a house while still keeping an eye on the market appreciation rate. And what this means for me is I'll go with the buy decision, but in the next couple of years, I'll always keep my eye on the house market and what are kind of how much houses are being sold at. And then based on this, I'll try to see if should I be considering selling my house to keep the value, or maybe should do I believe that the market will recover and I'll still be under the range that we discussed, the 0 to 2% depreciation, which I'll still be good for me to kind of keep the house in while still making value. So this is kind of the conclusion for me. You might notice that I did not maximize for happiness. I just maximized for dollars in this analysis. However, I mean, that's something we can do if there's interest. This would entail assigning different weights to important factors, converting those factors into a monetary value, comparing and adjusting with other quantitative values in the model, and then generating a combined composite index of monetary and happiness. So now that we have a reasonable decision, I mean, the wisdom is in execution. And this is kind of how you translate the good work that you've done in your reasoning, and then you capture the value out of that. And I mentioned this because a lot of people sometimes they get hung up on analysis and they just kind of keep analyzing and analyzing and analyzing. I mean, there's just only so much you can know and analyze with the information at hand. There's always a degree of uncertainty, and then you have to kind of have faith in your reasoning power and your methodology, and then just kind of go and then do it and execute. Uh, don't fall into the trap of analysis paralysis. With that, I'm going to end this talk with a recommendation for other software tools to aid with decision modeling. I've only tried Analytica and a bit of Palisade Risk, but I've seen some of the others called Rational Will and Bias Fusion and SIPMath, and you can always do everything that I showed today in Excel. However, it's gonna take you a long time, especially to model the uncertainties, the probability curves, and the different probabilities there. Using Analytica, especially that it's free for a certain limit, is much better option that I recommend.